Hey, I'm Eden. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to talk about decentering men. I recently just had a TikTok go viral in which I was talking about lesbians in the bisexual community because there's this huge discourse online right now about how lesbians don't want to date bisexuals. And when you blanket statement things like that, that is just biphobia. Point blank, period. If you don't want to date bisexuals because they're bisexual, that is biphobia. It can be your preference. There's no law against it. Like, if that's your only reasoning, it's not really a great look. I think what lesbians are trying to say, most of us, I don't resonate with this. I date pan bi girls.
She's an ally. Talk, Valentina. Ally.
But what I think lesbians are really trying to say is that they don't want to date people that haven't decentered men. And a cutie guy actually commented on my TikTok being like, I'm a man, how do I decenter men? One, thank you for that. Two, yeah. Men also need to decenter men. Before everyone gets so worked up in the comments, and by everyone, I mean pick me trad wives and men who have Cheetos on their fingers while they type and or abuse allegations. Decentering men is not the same thing as dehumanizing men. Do not conflate the two. Decentering men is in the pursuit of equality between men and women. I am not a huge fan, obviously, as a member of the queer community, of gender binaries. However, for the sake of this conversation, we're gonna use binaries, but please know that this is in no way me trying to eradicate non-binary people. We're going layman's terms here. There's a few different people credited with this mantra, but I think it's the perfect way to start out this video, especially for those of you that are feeling yourself get defensive. The quote is, when someone is accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And this is something we see quite often with white people who love to white lives matter things. See this a lot with gender, see this a lot with the queer community, attacks on family, what have you. People acknowledging a problem does not mean that they're attacking you. You can have issues with these things without being a horrible person. It's like in Glennon Doyle's book Untamed, where she's talking about how we inherently live in a racist society. So we as white people, speaking as a white person, have to be actively anti-racist in order to combat racism. It's not enough to just not be racist. You need to be actively combating it and thinking about it often because it is in our water. Right? It's kind of like how we have microplastics in our body now. We didn't make that decision, but it's in us. It's the same thing with racism. It's literally in us because we have grown up in a society and culturally raised in a system that is racist. And I don't have any right to talk about racism as a white person. I'm not an expert in this, but I think it's something to note in terms of this quote. But this video is about gender, decentering men. And all of this is so important to kind of lead off this conversation because we have to first acknowledge that men are centered in our society and our culture in order to then address the problem. And whether you like it or not, all men, women, and children are affected by centering men. We live in a patriarchal society, point blank, period. If you want to fight with the wall. Google is free. But if you're living in a world where you see the same thing day in and day out, your brain is going to learn that that is normal and that is just the way things are, right? It's like the sun coming up every morning. I don't know for sure it's going to come up in the morning, but I have seen it come up every single morning for 29 years. So I'm like instinctively not even worrying about that. We have seen men in power. We have seen men leading the way, despite being the more emotional of the sexes. For the last, I don't know, eternity, men have been in charge. We're just barely starting to tip those scales. Yes, we have made improvement as a society. That does not eradicate the fact that there is still so far to go. So let me go ahead and read some stats. As of February 2025, women hold 28% of seats in Congress. They comprise 26% of the Senate and 29% of the House of Representatives, which honestly, this was higher than I expected. Like, yay. We've got a quarter, ladies. Statewide elective executive offices, women hold 30.3% of these positions, including 24% of governorships. Nice. Notably, a record 14 women held governorships simultaneously in early 2025. Again, yay, we're making progress. Oop, still a fourth. Women hold 33.5% of state legislative seats, marking a significant increase from 25 in 2018. Several states, including Nevada, New Mexico, and Colorado, have achieved gender parity or majority women legislator, which is amazing. Again, not great, but it's the little things, ladies. Local women represent 25.3% of mayors in cities with populations over 30,000. Federal government. Although a woman has yet to serve as a president or chief justice of the Supreme Court, Kamala Harris made history as the first female vice president. That one alone should piss you off. It pisses me off every day. We could have had her. We really could have had her. Okay, now let's look at things a little bit more culturally instead of politically, right? So we have C-suites. C-suites, women held 11.8% of C-suite positions in the S&P Total Market Index at the end of 2023, a slight decrease from the 12.2% the previous year. That is horrific. That is actually so gross. Fortune 500 CEOs, women hold 10.4% of CEO positions in Fortune 500 companies. The Russell 3000, 9% of CEOs in the Russell 3000 index are women, up from 6.2% in 2021. So needless to say, it's not great. It's been worse, right? Like, we didn't have the right to vote a while ago. And we have men such as this guy getting up in colleges to talk about women like this.
I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
So yes, I am grateful that we have made some improvement. However, we are nowhere close where we need to be. The dialogue is only getting worse surrounding women and what their roles are in society. While there is no issue with a woman wanting to be a mother or a wife, there is an issue when we're told that that is our duty and our sole purpose in this world. So how does this play into decentering men? This is a cycle, right? So I just read you off some stats of some of the most powerful positions that we can see in our lives, in our culture, in our society. And we are so used to seeing men dominate those fields. Ergo, our little brains that developed within this narrative are going to even subconsciously pull towards that. And so in order to decenter men, you have to make a diligent and intentional effort to seek out non-men's opinions, experiences, uplifting their businesses, supporting them, hearing them out, because you are instinctively going to probably reach the other way. And this is, in a conversation where maybe you haven't done the work, obviously. Like, if you've been doing the work, you're going to reach for men less often. And one of the easiest and biggest ways that we see this kind of manifest is in prioritizing men's feelings and comfort. I think a really important part of this discussion is for women and non-men in general. There's a safety concern to this. I have put up with disgusting behavior from men, both in private and public, because I am worried for my safety. Again, if you want to argue with a wall. There's literal data. Men are terrifying and women are almost always the victims. So what sucks about this conversation is that, like, while we can sit here and be like, oh my God, yes, decenter men, there's a really good chance that you are centering men in some capacity and in some circumstances because you literally have to for the sake of your safety. But let's imagine that we live in a world where we don't have to fear men. Wouldn't that be so beautiful? Wouldn't that be so lovely? If I'm ever president, there will be a curfew for men. But I was perusing Reddit, which is usually one of the most crusty, dusty circles and pits of hell. But I was looking things up on decentering men, and Queasy Cherry 1 left us a great note. In short, it means not considering a man's feelings as more important than your own. That doesn't mean that men's feelings don't matter. It just means that women's feelings do not come as a secondary consideration to that. I.e., man does something that upsets you. Instead of deciding not to broach the topic because then he may be upset, you bring it up and have a discussion about it. Your feelings are considered and weighed, as are his. Both parties take responsibility for their own feelings and what needs to be done to address those feelings, rather than the woman addressing his feelings for him and then tacking hers on only if they don't have a conflict with the primary objective of making him feel better. This is something that we see a lot, even in very safe discussions with men. I think a way that this kind of manifests is, like, one, not speaking up, right? They're either going to deny you, say that you're wrong, that you're very invalid for feeling that way. But I think of situations, and I have been in this situation so many times, where I come to a man or I'm having a conversation with a man and I'm presenting facts. I'm presenting literal facts of things that happened in the news, things that happened in my life. Maybe there's a little bit of my feelings here and there, some of my personal experience within the narrative. Men will always play devil's advocate. Oh my God, what if the devil didn't need an advocate? What if we didn't advocate for the devil? And what I've noticed is men will always try to see the other side when it is a woman speaking, and it's very rare that they are playing devil's advocate when speaking with their fellow bros. And that is because men are centered. Men are revered as right. They actually don't even have to come to the table with facts. I'm watching a documentary right now on Netflix called Turning Point about the Vietnam War. I highly recommend it, but it's so insane to watch the way that the narrative of the war was spun by men in power and how they could just say whatever they wanted. These men in power would literally come to the news, they would come to the press, and they would just make up numbers. They would make up numbers, make up stats, and they got away with it. If a woman came to the table and was like, hey, here are literal, stats of all this research I did, a man is going to double check it. A man is going to play devil's advocate. If a woman comes to the table and is like, I think we should do this, they're always going to try to play devil's advocate with you. And it frustrates me so much. And a way to decenter men specifically in that situation is to not do the song and dance of devil's advocate. Hey, no, that's actually just fact, so we're good. Hey, no, that's actually my opinion or my experience, so we're good. There's something to think about. Another example of this, right, is like women, we are so conditioned to move to the side when we see men walking on the sidewalk. And I know this is a silly example, but I think it's such a physical tell on how we center men or just like make ourselves uncomfortable in order to make men more comfortable. And if you start after this video, if you have not already, catching yourself when you want to move on the sidewalk for a man or he touches you and you go, sorry, why am I sorry? I was just standing there. Why am I moving? Why don't you move? You're on my side of the sidewalk. The minute that you stop doing these things, you are going to start bumping shoulders. You are going to start having a very different social experience when you stop making yourself uncomfortable. You stop making yourself smaller to just like keep men comfortable. It is crazy the amount of men you will run into just by not moving. I think another really good example of that is this TikToker who I'm not even going to publish his TikTok because I think it's dumb. And this is one of those examples of like, not everyone should have a platform. But it was this man and he went on a hike and he came across this girl probably around his age who was watching a video on her phone. Landscape, so like probably watching a movie, a YouTube video, something. She had her headphones in. He tries to say hi to her. She continues walking on her merry way, enjoying her own hike by herself, as was the plan. He makes this whole TikTok about how we're losing social skills as a society. Bring back socialization, bring back community. Shut up. Shut up. I promise you, if a dude had just walked by you, you probably wouldn't have thought twice about it. But you're so used to, again, because of the conditioning that we have societally, so used to women catering to you as men. You're so used to them making themselves uncomfortable or putting themselves out in really minute ways to make you more comfortable. And so again, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality is going to feel like oppression. He got called out. Let me be so clear. His comments were like, hey, so this is not the take. This was dumb. You should be embarrassed and you should delete this. Like, she didn't owe you anything. And it's actually super weird to make content about someone like not doing what you wanted and not pleasing you in public. And my guy cannot take an L. He goes on to make another video about how this was actually a safety concern because what if he had been a bad guy and what if he had hurt her? I don't know who needs to hear this that is a man, but let me tell you as a woman, so I have an experience that you don't. Women are always aware of you in our spaces. I will never be in a space, a street, an alley, a room, anything where I am not aware of the men around me. Even if I don't talk to you, even if I don't make eye contact with you, I know you're there. And I know you're there because you are my predator. You are literally my predator. Don't do that. Don't speak for women and what their experience is as a man because you actually, fun fact, have never experienced that. And I hope it is obvious that you should not be speaking on things that you have no experience in. I don't know. I know you're also used to doing that though, as a man. I'm getting fired up. It's probably because I had a reel recently that went viral and Christian men are in my comments just racing to the bottom, sprinting, Iron Man, marathoning to who can say the most vile, heinous thing in my comments. It's literally never women, maybe one, and that poor lady's brainwashed. Anyway, not only are we fed this constant narrative of men being in charge, men being more important, men's feelings needing to be prioritized, we are also then in turn on the other side of the coin, really fed this narrative and this stereotype of what a woman should be. And granted, this has made so much progress. Like I see the media that kids these days are growing up with versus what I grew up with. And I'm like, oh my God, I have and do cry about it often, how powerful it is to be showcasing women in roles other than wife, mothers. Again, there's nothing wrong with those things if you want to be those things. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to be those things. Like there's a reason why in media there is something called the Bechdel test. Let me read off the definition of the Bechdel test in case you haven't heard about it. I heard about it honestly when I was really young. Like I remember it getting brought up, which I'm like trying to remember who would have brought that up to me because like I was a Mormon child. I assure you, no one was that concerned with the Bechdel test in the Mormon church. But the Bechdel test is a simple measure of gender representation in media, specifically film, which determines if a film passes by meeting three different criteria. At least two named female characters must be present. They have a conversation with each other, and that conversation must not be about a man. It is actually like so humbling to look at the breakdown of the Bechdel test and know how much media does not fit into this. When we are seeing female representation, we're seeing women represented in media, we are often failing within this framework. We are often seeing women that either don't have a relationship with each other, or they are focused on men, or they're just straight up not named. This is how I feel when I like hear true crime stories, or like I see things on the internet about women being harmed or women being abused, and all the comments are like, that was somebody's daughter, that was someone's sister, that was someone's mother. Like, yeah, but I don't care who she was related to. I care about her. That was a real human. That was a human whose worth was not defined by the people she had relationships with. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't really remember a time that I was ever told like, oh, that was someone's father, that was someone's son. Right? It's giving like, oh, is your husband helping with the kids today? What are you talking about? We are both the kids' parents. Something I see all the time, especially growing up in Utah and having so many people still involved in that culture. Hate to tell you, babe, but your husband is just as much of a parent as you are. I'm getting sidetracked again, just talking about men. So let's go back to decentering them, because a huge part of this Reddit thread that I was reading as well was people talking about dehumanizing men, or men complaining that that's what's happening to them. But again, I'm going to challenge you to do some introspection on if it's actually dehumanizing or if it's just a quality that now feels like oppression to you because you've never had to be equal in your life with women. And so if you're a man wanting to decenter men, you are naturally going to be called to people like you. So even more so than women, people conditioned as women growing up, I would really challenge you to be intentional on centering women. I'm naturally inclined to go with people that look like you, act like you, have the same social mannerisms as you do. So you're going to, on top of what we've been taught culturally and societally, be called to other men. And so I think men, and this is where it goes really opinion based, because there's basically nothing on the internet about men decentering men, which I find very interesting. Men need to focus more on uplifting women and speaking up for women. And I think this is where I see a lot of men, even the best ones I know, fall short. I see so many cases about women's rights or women's abuse finally getting press, and it's like, me and all my girlies are posting, talking about it, signing petitions, what have you. And I almost never see my male friends posting about it. And this is something that I find very interesting, even my most like woke left-leaning friends. And I think it's because if something doesn't affect you, you truly have to do the work and you have to be intentional to keep giving it attention. Otherwise, it is going to take the backseat. So if you are a man that is not necessarily negatively affected by the patriarchy, you're given more pros than cons by the patriarchy, you are going to have to make a very intentional effort to catch yourself and to clock yourself when maybe you are playing devil's advocate just because you don't truly believe the woman. Maybe you're naturally more inclined to watch men's podcasts, to listen to men speak. Listen to women, center women, uplift women, make an effort to buy from woman-owned businesses, give women platforms to speak, start advocating actively for women. Because yes, we are out here in these streets fighting for our rights and recognition and equality. You cannot put all of that weight on the oppressed. Your trade for having the privilege you do is speaking up and doing the work to prioritize the other minorities affected by this system. Which again, that can be applied to so many things, especially within our society, because we live in a very racial, gendered, conservative culture that loves to keep minorities down. That is the reality of it. And so if you are working with some privilege, right? Like I am a cis white woman. If I need to, I can go straight passing any day. I have so much privilege, and it is my responsibility truly to use that to help the people that do not have that and to uplift them. So do the same as a man. Make a real effort to start uplifting women, uplifting women's voices, and uplifting women's stories. Because again, going back to Queasy Cherry, they said, like, in this world that's equal, we just have equal discussions. That's really all women are looking for. That's all feminism is. Right now, that is not the world that we exist in. And it's going to take a lot of work to fix that. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. Subscribe, leave a comment. I don't know. See you next time.